Beruchim Abayim, and welcome to Torah Talks, Chazaq's program with special guests. We have with us Rabbi Menashe Menashe. Baruch haba.
Thank you for having me.
Pleasure, all ours. And we're going to be speaking about the life and legacy of his illustrious father, Hakham, Rabbi Menashe, our family Rav. For many, many years, we grew up together in the Bet Knesset in the shul in Rigo Park. And it's an honor and privilege to have you. Thank you very much for joining us. And if you could start with a little background about yourself for our audience.
So I grew up in Queens.
With the Chazaq with the strength in Queens.
Strength in Queens.
Based in Queens.
With the Miro family, and that's where I grew up till about, I was 10 years old about, and then we moved to Great Neck. The family moved to Great Neck. And then I was in Great Neck, and then for high school, I went to Chapes Chaim, and then we were in the old building, and yes, 1 year in the new building. Then I went to yeshiva in Baltimore for about 9 years, in Nairstown, Baltimore.
Rabbi
Feldman, yes. And then I went to out-of-town call in Atlanta for 3 years.
Oh, wow.
Then I went to Toronto and out-of-town call for five years.
Traveling.
Yes, and I've been there for a while, yes. And now we just opened up a new high school, Bezat Hashem. This was the first year.
September.
This is going to be the second year.
The second year, B'Shad.
So we had a 9th grade, now we're going to have a 9th and 10th Bezat Hashem.
Baruch Hashem. Wow, amazing. So we're going to be talking about your father, Zatal, and growing up with your father in the shul in Midrash Ben Ish Chai, always priding about the Ben Ish Chai. My brother, Shebari Ravilan, has a sefer on Pirush Ben Ish Chai. He gives credit to your father, Zatal, for introducing him to that. What's the connection to the Ben Ish Chai in your family and your father?
So my family, first of all, is from Iraqi, so from Baghdad.
Where the Ben Ish Chai was.
So he was the Rosh HaGolah over there, and amongst many countries in the Sfaradim, he was at that time the leading rabbi, and Shelos from different places, different countries, different places. Hachamim quote him, speak about him, and he was the leading authority in Baghdad. And the Iraqi Jews in specific had a very dear connection to Hakham Yosef Chaim, as many of the Jews also not from Iraq did, and they spent many time working on his works, learning his works, knowing his works, his different works, whether he has halakha, he has drash, he has kabbalah, he has everything.
I love the drashot.
The
Yosef Chai, the Sefarim, it's just the Mashirim, the parables. Anybody's ever into it, just open up the Ben Ish Chai. It's geschmack. It's amazing. So your family was originally from Baghdad, and that was a connection, and your father started Midrash Ben Ish Chai after Rabbi Yosef Chaim of Baghdad. That was the whole idea. And with everything, your father was also involved with India and other countries. If you could.
So my father was born. A lot of Iraqi Jews went through Baghdad to India. My 6 great grandfathers, David Sassoon, he was in Baghdad, and he was taken captive they were a very rich family, and he was taken captive by the king or whatever was in Iraq, and they paid a big ransom. They wanted to do it a second time, so he ran away to India. And he started building a lot there. There's Sassoon libraries, Sassoon docks, a lot of things over there, Sassoon trusts, and there was an Iraqi community that went through in India. Like Rabbi Yaakov also was one of the people who grew up with my father. He went through India.
Wow.
So there was a big Iraqi community there. And my grandfather, Alav Shalom, he was the head of the community at the time.
Your father's father?
Yes, my father's father. So my father always felt connections. I used to go back, even now, recently he used to go back, try to help out the few, not so many.
I remember the photos, and I think there was videos of your fathers that saw going over there and giving their short classes, or it was a whole event. It was a whole unbelievable. And if we could touch upon your mother, Alei Shalom, Rabbanit Ruth Menashe, who also we were very, very close with. She would give, along with the Rav, would give a lot of shiurim for Chazaq for the women, the community, and also tragic passing, and the amount that she did for college with the Jewish people is unbelievable as well. If you could touch upon her upbringing as well.
So her upbringing, she was born in Israel. Yes, and she was from a more Masorti traditional family, but she always had it in her. Her aunt used to call her rabbanit, even when she was young.
Wow.
She wasn't so knowledgeable. She had something. She said when she was a young girl, she loved Nishmat Kol Chai, the prayer of Nishmat Kol Chai, praising HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And she grew up, and I think when she met my father, she got a lot stronger in her Yahadut, in her Judaism. And she grew a lot, and that was, and then ever since then, she got stronger and stronger, and she was a real Eshet Chai. She was supported everything my father wanted to do. Supported him in everything he wanted to do. He was able to do with her backing.
100%.
And after she passed away, it was very hard for him to. He didn't have his support.
100%. I remember the events and the shirim. They were always together, and as a child in the Bet Knesset, the shul, they were always together. And the choirs, I don't know if you remember that. I was part of the choirs, like one of the little ones. My brothers were the older ones, but the Rabbanit was always in the backstage, back scenes in the corner, always making sure things were under control. Amash, a couple, very inspiring. The way you're going to say something as well. I think I cut you off.
And that was from her and my father together. And she also did, as you were saying, she was also herself. She helped women a lot.
100%.
She went in with women, classes with women. She helped people a lot. And people used to come over to speak to her. They felt very comfortable with her. She liked everyone. And a lot of people used to come just with their problems. She'd speak to them.
I remember vividly, and very, very big loss. But the many qualities of your parents, the Hakham Rachab, blessed memory. If you mention maybe one or two that stick out.
So my father, one thing that sticks out is his the Yaakov Avinu had a midah, character trait of truth. And my father was he stuck very strongly to what he believed in was right. And people tried to sway him, people tried to, in the Bet Knesset, do things, get more money, whatever it was. If this is not how he did it, if not what he felt was the right thing, there was no moving it. And people offered him money for things, but there was no talking about it. It's not what he believed was right. And he did many different things that either his minhagim, his misorah, what he felt was right api halacha, that people felt like, why are you doing it like this? And because of that, he lost out. But that would not faze him at all, because he stuck to doing what he believed was right, and he would not budge an iota.
That's what Emet is all about. Emet is Aleph, Mem, and Taf. We all know it's the first letter is Aleph of the Hebrew alphabet. Mem is the middle letter, and Taf is the last letter. From the beginning to the middle to the end, it has to be truthful, and that's what the Rav was all about. Emet. And I don't remember the exact cases, but when it came to halacha, when it came to kashrut lemashal, I remember also the Rav was very migdaktik, very particular.
Even with the Mishuni said for Sfaradim, it was very makpid. The Beit Yosef, a lot of these things now, Baruch Hashem, the Sephardi community is growing, so it's much easier, and much more people are doing it.
I remember back then it was like, what?
What are you talking about? What is that?
Exactly, but the Rav was very particular about it. Also, the tzniut.
Yeah,
I remember very, very much with the woman in the women's section, with even the non-married to have their head covered.
Yeah, the poskim bring that when they make brachot, it's proper for them to wear head covering, and he wanted them to wear head coverings.
Amazing. Emet should definitely true. Your family prided itself in this Sephardic heritage, with the ways of pronouncing and saying words, and you could elaborate a little bit about that.
Sure.
Rabbi Menashe Menashe, YA''AQOB.
So one of the things that my father held on to, like when he had something, he wouldn't let go. So now, but as we're saying, Baruch Hashem, the Sfaradim have grown tremendously. But when he came, and he, say 30, 40 years ago, there was no Sfaradim, Bnei Torah, Talmidei Chachamim, barely a few rabbis, but there was no community of people, boys going to yeshivot. It was not found. And all the yeshivot that we had were all Ashkenazi. So boys that went to yeshiva, the only thing that they know is Baruch Hashem, the Ashkenazim have the beautiful yeshivot, but the Sfaradim, the only thing they know is the Ashkenazi Havara, the way they pronunciate, the Ashkenazi Chachamim, the Ashkenazi way of learning, everything. That's the only thing they know. And these people are Talmidei Chachamim, so they think that this is the boy coming to learn and thinks that this is the only way, the only right way. And he doesn't know that there's a whole tremendous world that the Sfaradim come from, of Chachamim in all the countries, that rich heritage, which unfortunately we don't have as much. The Ashkenazim were very good in keeping the stories and whatever it was of their Chachamim, which they had great Chachamim. But the Sfaradim, unfortunately, they did not. Everything was more tsanua, more with a modest, without publicizing, and it was very harder to keep them to follow our tradition, because we felt like, where are we coming from? So my father felt like this is something he has to push, he has to uplift, and I'll give you examples. There's nothing wrong with quoting an Ashkenazi Chacham in your drasha, but he used to say, it's nice, but they're never ever quoted the Sephardi Chachamim. So whatever you're going to say from the Ashkenazi Chachamim, most probably someone's going to say it, someone's going to quote it, someone is going to. But the Sephardi Chachamim, like, there's so much Torah that they brought in. Why should you not try to quote that? Why shouldn't you try to speak about that?
Just for the record, lately, Baruch Hashem, many of the shot at Chazaq, you have the Sephardic Gedolim being mentioned right and left constantly. So today, being
proud, yeah, for sure. Saying it's now Baruch Hashem, because
the Ben Ish Chai is mentioned. All backgrounds, all stripes, Hasidut, Litvish, Yeshiva.
Yeah, Baruch Hashem.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
I take pride in it. It's really very exciting.
Yes.
Baruch Hashem. So back then it wasn't like that, but your father was a staunch, advocate.
Yes, people should find out, even if they're going to Ashkenazi yeshivot. They should find out what their heritage is. They find out the Chachamim that...
Be proud of their heritage, of their background.
Exactly.
Also in Eretz Yisrael, a very big thing with the Sephardic community,
yes,
to bring back its crown of glory. And your family, Baruch Hashem, is continuing the legacy. And there is Midrash Ben Ish Chai, and I know there's constantly, events and videos and newsletters. If you could touch upon the great work that has been in the books as well. I have all the volumes. 1 minute, what was it?
Torah Minute.
Torah Minute. There you go. Hit Torah Minute. If you could touch upon the programs of the work that your parents started, and it's continuing to grow through your siblings.
So my parents, Alim Hashem, they felt a responsibility for everyone, and that's one of the things. Like we spoke about qualities before. One of the things were reaching out to people. Everyone, they had a connection to everyone.
It's true.
And even when they got older,
I remember the singles events.
Yeah, very good.
You remember that?
Yes.
We try to make shidduchim, and people will come from all over the place.
So they felt the connection and obligation to everyone. And even when they got older, usually when there's a big age gap, it's hard to speak the language. But even to the later years, my father always had a connection with like younger boys, teenage boys, because he didn't like hold himself higher. He would always connect with them eye to eye.
The Rav would connect, and it was Rabbi Menashe. Whenever he would give their shot, especially at the Chazaq, I would remember, he would always throw in like, a joke here and there, like you said, to connect with the crowd. And you had youngsters over there, and they connected with the Rav very much.
So they felt an obligation to everyone, and part of that was that you're saying singles events. They had all sorts of single events. They had Shabbatons, they had like dates, they had all sorts of things, lectures.
The CDs, I remember also.
CDs.
Before it was popular, the Rav was
putting out CDs so people could hear Shiurim. And that's also the other thing, like the Torah Minute, for example, is all people now with their phones and whatever it is. So now it's also popular, but he started many of these things. He was one of the first people to start.
Sure.
So he used to send out a short, the Bar Torah, on whatever it was, halacha, parasha, whatever it was, depending on the day. And so someone could read in a minute, and it was many people read it. People really enjoyed it. People used to read. I still see. Someone was telling me he was in Florida. My sister's father, he wanted a Ben Ish Chai. The first thing that came up on the computer, the most bought thing was this. My father's books. This is English. It was very practical. He used to do whatever he could do for the people to be able to gain on the level that they were on. Not trying to give something over their head, something down to earth to them. And that's what they tried. They tried the whole life to strengthen people in their service of Hashem.
Yep.
and they did whatever they were able to do to do that.
Yes, they did, and I'm a testimony to it, and I've seen it with my own two eyes. The amount they did for Ham Yisrael, for the Jewish people, constantly being innovative, coming with many different ideas and programs and events. I remember that your father Zatzal had a connection to many Gedolim, Mordechai Eliyahu, Rabbi Yaakov Hillel. You mentioned there was a Rabbi Halberstam. If you could to just touch upon the relationships, the very, very close relationships. I remember Mordechai Eliyahu. I remember when the Rav passed away, how we had the Chazaq magazine back then, and the Rabbanit reached out, and we did a whole feature about it, and they were always involved. So yeah, if you could touch upon the Gedolim of yesteryear.
About
The Rabbanim that the Rav had a kesher with.
So Rabbi Mordechai Eliyahu, so it goes back. I mean, my grandfather already, my father's father, Alav Shalom, he already had a connection with a lot of the Chachamim. To say a funny story,
Sure.
once there was Hakham Salman Khougi Abudi. He was Abed in Yerushalayim, in Bavel, in Baghdad. And he came to Yerushalayim, and he didn't know how to write the script that we write Hebrew in. So that's kind of from the Ashkenazi countries. If you see all the Gedolim, how they wrote, that's how they wrote. But the Sephardic countries, their script was more similar to Rashi letters. So when he came, he didn't know how to write that. So the person, whoever it was over there, like, this guy is Amaris, an ignorant person, and they gave him a broom to sweep the streets of Yerushalayim. And their humility didn't say a word. He swept the streets of Yerushalayim, and at that point, the chief rabbi of Israel was Rabbi Nisim. When Rabbi Nisim saw what's happening, he's like, "Are you guys crazy? You know who this is?" And he became Abed in Yerushalayim from swimming in the streets of Yerushalayim.
Wow.
So he once, my grandfather used to come visit, and Eretz Yisrael, a limo used to come and pick him up and take him to, happens to be Rabbi Nisim. And he used to speak one time, and every time he would come, the Arabs were like, "Here, see this guy." A limousine's picking him up, and they're like, they speak with him about him and make fun of him in Arabic. And he spoke. So one day, instead of him going to Rabbi Nisim came to him, and they were sitting and speaking in Arabic, and all the Arabs were shocked. So they already had a connection to a lot of these Chachamim, and they had a connection also with my grandfather Mordechai Eliyahu, and my father had a connection to, they used to speak in Halakha, in different things, and also Rabbi Yaakov Hillel. My father spoke quite a bit to Rabbi Yaakov Hillel. When he came to America, he came to my father, and when my father goes there, he used to go there, speak to him. After my father passed away, and some of my sisters still in touch with him. And yeah, and Rabbi Halberstam also to my grandfather. Rabbi Halberstam's father,
Sinai Halbert.
That's the son. Yeah, so his father. That's why my father was close. His father came from Europe to India. I'm not even sure why. And my grandfather was the one that took care of him. And somehow their children also became close. So yeah, my father he was connected. He used to be in touch. He used to speak to them about different things, different advice with these people, with halachic questions. He used to speak to these people, and it was a big merit for them, for my father to be able to be connected to such people.
100%. The people are probably thinking your name is Rabbi Menashe Menashe. How is it to have the same first and last name? How did that come about?
So I'll start with this: the Iraqis, many of them, their last names are first names. So
remember Yaakov Hillel.
Yaakov Hillel,
the first name.
Yeah, and Yaakov Hillel, Rabbi Yosef. But so Rabbi Yosef, his last name was
Ovadia.
Okay, very good. So it's the same thing. So
how did it change again?
He changed it. So, well, I think the pshat is they got the last name from someone important in the family. That's what it starts.
By me, it's Meirov. So it was my great grandfather Chaim Meir. So Meir became Meirov. They just added.
Exactly.
It's also first.
So once he's an important person in the family, and so that name is in the family, so it ends up. So it's a last name, and it's also a name in the family. So it ends up.
So Menashe was a name like
great grandfather.
Great grandfather. So your father's grandfather.
My father's grandfather.
Oh wow. Very, very inspiring. The life and legacy of Rabbi Yaakov Menashe. Like I mentioned, I'm a testimony to the work that they've done for this community, for the great end community. How many people became Baalei Tshuva, repenting and getting closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to God Almighty. I see people all the time, and we always reminisce, the days of old growing up, and so many people went through the shul doors and grew in halakha and Torah and mitzvot. So we have a custom of minhag on Torah Talks, a final message, if the rabbi could share with us all.
So a final message, maybe we'll speak about just the midah emet a little bit, like we spoke about earlier on.
Yes, Titen emet Yaakov, like your father's first name.
Yes, so just as we said, my father didn't stray at all from emet, as you were saying, aleph, mem, tav, and then it says that sometimes people think we'll stray a little bit from the emet. I do emet mostly, right? But first of all, when you're trying to give off to your children, if they see you're living a double life, that's the worst message you could possibly be giving. If they see a truthful person at home, so even when sometimes, unfortunately, we see things that in the newspaper or wherever it is, that people that you might think are good, but they were not so, unfortunately, not often, but sometimes we see, but you could give over to your children, you see it at home, not like that. And you can give over to your children, most of the time it's not like that, this individual, and they have a backbone of emet, and they believe what they're being taught. 100%. When it's not the way, when they see mixed messages at home, it's impossible to properly raise children. It's impossible to give over a message. There's no truth. So it says, person sometimes wants to take most of the truth, right? Take off a little bit truth. Okay, I 99% of the time say truth. Sometimes I lie. So the Maharal writes, emet, if you take off a little bit, the aleph,
mit,
you're left with mit.
Dead.
So it's a powerful message that a person has to live his life truthfully in everything. And the person's never gonna, if a person realizes that Hashem wants him to say emet, truth, he's never gonna lose by listening to Hashem. And a person should try his best to live the life of emet, of not giving in for the things that are incorrect, not doing the things that are incorrect. If a person lives truthfully his whole life as the life of emet, and you'll only do the right things. So it's a
really good thing. It's a beautiful message, powerful message. People should also be met with themselves, be truthful with themselves. Many people say, I can't learn, or I can't do this chesed, this kindness, I can't do this, I can't pray with concentration. If you're truthful, you know yourself. If you work on yourself, you could do everything and anything. Chazaq, Rabbi Menashe Menashe, Chazaq, the neshama of your parents should continue to go highest places in Gan Eden. We should be zochet to see the Geulah Shema right now before Tisha B'Av. That we should have the rebuilding of the Bet HaMikdash with Chiyat HaMitim, with the resurrection of the dead. We should all be together again. I want to thank all of our partners and podcasts and platforms, and a special shout out to Torah Anytime for hosting our podcast. Baruch Hashem, I lost track of the number, over 110 episodes already. Baruch Hashem, amazing feedback. We really appreciate all the feedback that people send in. We get the messages, and it gives us a lot of chizuk inspiration. Suggestions for future guest speakers always welcome. Dedications always welcome. info@chazaq.org, info@chazaq.org. And the Chazaq's mission right now, it's the summer months. We're full force with the yeshiva placement for the September school year. If you have a family member, a friend, a neighbor that goes to public schools, reach out to Chazaq. We'll hold the hand. They will guide them to the right Jewish day school with the Shem Zell. If not, we have after school programs, Sunday school programs, we have teens programs. We have a new youth center right now over here in Queens. But we have programming throughout, everywhere and anywhere, working on Canada, Bezat Hashem, together with the rabbi. And Bezat Hashem, reach out to the organization. We're always ready, willing, and able to Bezat Hashem do more. Thank you very much.